Well, hello everybody. I'm your host. This is Colin O'Callahan, also known as OC, and it's been a downtrodden week because the Patriots had a very deflating overtime loss on Sunday to the Seahawks, but that really was just one thing. Jawan Bentley is now out for the rest of the season with a torn pec, so I'm doing super awesome, and I am definitely not salty at all. So I think it's just amazing being a Patriots fan right now. But TJ is not here today. He is taking care of some business matters, with his new job, and definitely respect the hell out of him for it. So today I'm going solo, and this is actually going to be exciting because I'm going to go on a lot of rants. There was a lot of drama that took place in the last week, whether it was what happened on Thursday Night Football with Tua's fourth concussion, which is absolutely devastating. The Eagles completely choking on Monday Night Football. Bryce Young getting benched. The Bengals costing themselves at the end. We're going to get into all of it. So I think with that being said, let's jump into the game and start with Thursday Night Football's preview between the the New York Jets, and the New England Patriots at MetLife Stadium. So this actually should be pretty interesting. The Patriots haven't lost at MetLife in nearly a decade, which is when Bill Belichick decided to give the ball to Ryan Fitzpatrick in overtime instead of Tom Brady, which ended biting him in the butt. And now the Jets will finally have a healthy quarterback, a fully healthy offense, but they have a lot of challenges to overcome. Jermaine Johnson is going to be out for the rest of the season with a torn Achilles. CJ Mosley, he might be inactive. But the Patriots are missing a lot of key guys as well. No City So, no Vidarian Lowe. You don't know what's going to happen with David Andrews or Michael Onwenu. And obviously the defense just lost both Barmore and Bentley. So they have a lot of adversity coming their way as well. Let's talk about what happened with these two teams last week. So they're coming off opposite endings. The Jets beat the Titans 24-17. It was a really decent game. I didn't really see too many fireworks, but the Jets offense, they looked comfortable. They looked like they were getting into a better rhythm. Breece Hall and Braylon Allen were fantastic as a running back tandem. They scored all their points. Special teams came up with a huge block, and their defense, while they gave up a couple big plays to Calvin Ridley, they hung in there. Will McDonald had 3 sacks, and they took advantage of 2 of the dumbest turnovers that I've seen in my life. Obviously coming from Will Levis. Their special teams blocked a punt. So they did enough on all 3 phases. And it might not have been the most convincing win, but positive strides were taking place. Aaron Rodgers had a decent game. Defense, I still have concerns when it comes to the run defense, but they hung in there. And, it was enough to get their first win under Aaron Rodgers. Well, second if you count last year and with that game, and I'll leave it at that. The Patriots, on the other hand, lost 23-20 to the Seattle Seahawks. They had a fourth quarter lead. They were in position to actually put it away, but Jacoby Brissett took a huge sack from Leonard Williams. Then Joey Sly's 48-yard field goal got blocked. And Geno Smith, who didn't really have the best game leading up to that, hung in there, showed up in the clutch, which he tends to do, or what he's been doing over the last couple of years when he has the ball in his hands last. And when he got the ball back in overtime, it was pretty much game over. DK Metcalf at JSN, they had huge performances. The Patriots' passing game is still a no-show because the only receiver that decided to show up was a tight end, and that was Hunter Henry. Running game is not an issue because Ramondre Stevenson had another 80-plus yards. Antonio Gibson had a couple big runs. He was 4 yards short of 100. And, the offense showed improvement. I mean, they're showing positive flashes, but it's just when you can't throw the ball effectively and your offensive line is a mess and the defense is just on the field for so long, then, you're going to lose either way. And that pass interference penalty from Jonathan Jones on the final possession, I think that pretty much just wrapped it up. So that's where both the Jets and Patriots are heading into. Not much to really go off here. I mean, the Patriots, they had their chances. They just completely blew them. Seahawks made more plays than they had. That's all you could say. When it comes to picking a winner, so TJ's got the Jets. I'll just write that down. For me, I've actually been really struggling with this one because as a homer, I really want to go with the Patriots here. But at the same time, Breece Hall, the last time he went up against his Patriots team, he was unstoppable. He touched the ball 37 times. He scored the only touchdown and 2-point conversion. And, I mean, without him, the Jets were probably not going to win this game. And, that's what the Patriots defense has to handle. And when you don't have Christian Barmore or Jawan Bentley, that's going to be even harder. So, I mean, Christian Gonzalez can do whatever he wants against Garrett Wilson, and that might put a lot more pressure on Aaron Rodgers, but that's going to be the X factor. And really, this Jets secondary is elite. And with how bad New England's passing game has been, I don't know what's going to happen. You have to deal with Quinton Williams up the middle. You still have capable playmakers like Quincy Williams that can make plays all over the field. You got Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed. You got the best slot corner and Michael Carter. So that's what it really comes down to. I think the Jets will win this game. It'll be close because, the Patriots, they always manage to hold in and they always make sure that, they're not going to go down without a fight. But, I mean, Jets have the better quarterback. I think they're well coached. But at the same time, not only have the Patriots been dominant at MetLife for the last 9 years or so, but Robert Saleh has yet to win a game on Thursday Night Football. So it could really go either way. But I think the Jets will find a way to win. Let's say they do it 20-13. That's my final score. Offense will throw a couple punches. Same thing with the Patriots, both sides of the ball. But it's just Jets have more talent, and I think it'll pay off in the end. And unless New England's wide receivers decide to show up, then that's what we're going to be. That's what it's going to happen. So now let's move on to the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Los Angeles Chargers. Justin Fields will be expected to make his third start of the season, while Justin Herbert did not practice today, but he is still expected to play on Sunday on the road. Both of them are coming off victory, so they're both 2-0, which is both surprising and positive to see because you want to see both of them do really well. The Chargers, they did the bare minimum against the worst team in the league. Probably the biggest laughing stock in all of football, but I'm going to get into that in just a bit. J.K. Dobbins is on pace to win Comeback Player of the Year. He has been phenomenal. Once again, he had over 130 yards and a touchdown. Justin Herbert didn't have the best game, just under 200 yards again, but Quentin Johnson had the best game of his career. The defense, they picked off Bryce Young once. They sacked him twice. And they didn't need to have that dominant of a game, even though the numbers say that they did. But, I mean, against this team, all you had to do was just have a pulse. And that would be just enough to win. And the Steelers, on the other hand, they have had at least convincing victory. I mean, they beat the Broncos, which was expected. I mean, the Steelers have a way better defense. And the offense, while it only scored one touchdown last week, I think that for the most part, they did okay. They made minimal mistakes. Justin Fields was, not screwing up. They were running the ball decently. I mean, Justin Fields had a nice touchdown pass to Darnell Washington on a back shoulder. And really, the defense just created takeaways. I mean, Bo Nix was so bad throwing the football. Most of their yards didn't come after garbage time. And that's not really all on Bo Nix. It's more on the scheming of Sean Payton and just the fact they don't have anybody that could get open. They don't run the ball. The O-line has not lived up to the hype. And their defense has actually been really good for the first 2 weeks. I know it's against soft competition, but, they've done what they needed to. It's just their offense just keeps letting them down. So this is a big statement game for both teams. It's at Pittsburgh, so the Steelers should be slight favorites here. I don't know what the exact line is there. I'll have to check in just a bit, but let's see what we got for this game. I'm just pulling up TJ's picks right here. He has the Chargers winning this game, which I can understand. I'm actually going to go with the Chargers here too. If Russell Wilson was starting, then I might have a slightly different opinion just for the simple fact we have yet to see what he has done in the black and gold. But the reason why I think the Chargers will win is, they've run the ball extremely well. That's what you were expecting with Greg Roman as the new offensive coordinator. He's going to run the ball a lot. He's going to make sure that there isn't much pressure riding on the shoulders of Justin Herbert. And you just want to see the more you run the football, the more you open up the passing game. And this is really going to be the first real test that the Steelers will have to face. I know that they did outstanding against the Falcons 2 weeks ago, who just stunned the Eagles. But at the same time, this is going to be the first top 5, top 10 quarterback that they're going up against. So it's not just going to solely rely on TJ Watt. It's going to come down to that secondary to see how they're going to do against Quentin Johnson, against Josh Palmer, and really how this front seven is going to handle the run, because that's what LA prides itself on. And on the other side, I mean, Justin Fields, for the first 2 weeks, like I said, he's done okay. He's been a game manager. He's not screwing up. But this Chargers defense has looked solid through these first 2 weeks. You know, again, not the toughest competition, but 10 points the first week, 6 the next. Steelers, they didn't score a touchdown the first week, and they only scored 1 next week. So this is a huge challenge on both sides of the ball for both of these teams. So this is going to be a really tight grudge match. I'm going to go with the Chargers just for the simple fact they have the better quarterback. I think they're going to be more prepared. I think, listen, Mike Tomlin is technically the better coach, but at the same time, I just don't know how much fight the Steelers are going to have, you know, when they're getting shredded in the run game and Justin Fields isn't really doing anything to get points on the board if they ever face that situation. So I think it'll be a lower scoring game. Both defenses are playing outstanding, but I still think Justin Herbert will do enough in the end. So I'll say they get it done 17-9. I think that sounds pretty reasonable. Again, I could be wrong because, you know, it's only a matter of time before these offenses finally get over the hump, but we'll see what happens. Next but not least, we've got the Minnesota Vikings versus the Houston Texans. Both are 2-0, which is shocking for the Vikings, but not so much for Houston. I think we got to start with Sam Darnold here, because if you're a Jets fan or a Panthers fan, or if you're Adam Gase or David Tepper, you are incredibly bitter. You are incredibly salty, because all it took for him was to get a change of scenery. And I said before these power rankings even began, or before the season began, that all Sam Darnold really needed to do was have a great head coach. He's got the best receiver. He's got plenty of talent on their offense. And this defense made plenty of moves in the offseason to make sure that they're a top 10 unit. And you're seeing it unfold before your very eyes. Now, I had them pretty low on my power rankings list, but at the same time, I said, don't expect them to be one of the worst teams in the league, because they don't have the type of team that's going to, you know, compete for a top 5 or top 10 draft pick. And against the 49ers, I don't know what better you could ask for them. You know, the defense came up with 6 sacks. They forced Brock Purdy to turn the ball over twice. Yeah, they gave up plenty of yards, but only 17 points. They never trailed. And Sam Darnold, once again, was on the money. 270 yards, a couple touchdown passes, only 9 incompletions, a 97-yard touchdown bomb to Justin Jefferson that set the tone for the rest of the game. 7 for 12 on third down. Yeah, they committed a couple turnovers, but I don't think they ever let this game get away from them. Still, they have yet to lose to the 49ers at home since 1992, when Rich Gannon was their quarterback. And while San Francisco tried to keep up, it was too little too late. They stalled out early. They turned the ball over. Their O-line struggled. And now they're going to be without Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel. So those are big obstacles that they have to get over. The Houston Texans were in a little bit of a sloppier victory. It was a very close defensive grudge match. I loved what I saw from both defenses. Really, it just came down to which offense was going to look more efficient. And while I didn't like what I saw for the most part from the Texans offense, they at least showed a lot more fight. You know, Nico Collins had an outstanding game. C.J. Stroud threw for 260 yards. Kaimi Fairbairn won Special Teams Player of the Week with 4 made field goals, 3 of them from like 45-plus yards. They did enough, and this defense really carried them from start to finish. They never trailed. They held Caleb Williams to just 174 yards on 23 completions. They picked him off twice. They sacked him 7 times. And you're seeing from the Texans that they're finding different ways to win. Last week, they relied on the running game and their offense to really carry them. This week, it was the defense. They knew that what they did against Indianapolis was unacceptable. They let Anthony Richardson make way too many big plays. And the next week, they knew what challenge they were going up against. It was Caleb Williams. And they played with a lot more fight, and they played with a lot more passion from start to finish. So, really, again, not too many things to take away from that one. I liked what I saw. Let's let's make our picks here. So TJ has the Texans, but I'm going to bring a little history in here because I was a former history major for a semester and a half. So let's enlighten ourselves with this. The Minnesota Vikings have not lost a single game to Houston in their entire history as a franchise. And there's a very good chance that that streak could end in, 4 or 5 days? It's going to be it's really tough to predict because it's a revenge game for Danielle Hunter, a revenge game for Jonathan Grenard, and for Stephon Diggs. But that's not really the point. Both offenses have plenty of star power. Justin Jefferson, he's dealing with a quad injury, but reports are saying that he's trying to play on Sunday, which will be huge. You don't know what's going to happen with Jordan Addison. You don't know what's going to happen with TJ Hawkinson. Ryan O'Neal didn't practice, and neither did Dallas Turner. They're first-round rookies. So Minnesota could be in a little bit of a struggle here. Houston, I don't really know what their injury report is at this moment, but you know that they got 3 potential number 1 options. You got Joe Mixon, who suffered a big injury last week, on a hip drop tackle that wasn't called, but he still managed to play through that fourth quarter. So you don't know what his status is going to be. I don't know. This is really tough. It's in Minnesota, but if the Vikings offense is not going to be at full strength, then I just don't know how they're going to be able to win this game when Sam Darnold is still trying to go through the motions. I'll go with Houston for now, but I could be wrong. It just depends on how healthy this Vikings offense is going to look. So I'll say the Texans win 27-20. I think it'll be close because I like what I've seen from the Vikings offense. The Giants was one thing, but then to pretty much punk the 49ers from beginning to end, that was very special to see. So that's why I'm going with them, with the Houston Texans. Now we get to the New Orleans Saints versus the Philadelphia Eagles. Honestly, I don't even know where to start here because the Saints just dismantled the Cowboys 44-19. They got the hottest offense in football. So much for me saying that Alvin Kamara was washed up because he scored 4 touchdowns. Derek Carr has been on the money. He's currently tied for the league in touchdowns, and he's leading the league in passer rating. Clint Kubiak has done a tremendous job revamping this unit and making sure that whatever happened last year was never going to happen again. And they still have a long way to go because there are going to be plenty of bigger challenges, especially in the type of division that they're in, since Baker Mayfield has looked promising and the Falcons are doing just as well themselves. But, damn, this offense has just been electric. And based on what I've seen from the Eagles last week, they could continue to pick up where they left off. The defense struggled against Dak Prescott, but they kept them out of the end zone for the most part. The only big play they gave up was a 65-yard touchdown to CeeDee Lamb in the middle of the second quarter. They picked off Dak twice. They forced Brandon Aubrey to score 16 of their 19 points. The Saints did plenty well enough on both sides of the ball to pull off a complete ass-kicking in Jerry World. And so bad, it's so sad to have Mike Tyson and Jake Paul just watch that atrocity on full display. But now we get to the freaking Eagles. They're up 18-15 in the fourth quarter. Yeah, it wasn't the most exciting game, but they were running the ball extremely well. Jalen Hurts was operating decently enough without A.J. Brown. You had 3rd and 3. All you had to do was run the clock out. The Falcons had just failed on a 4th down conversion at their own 39-yard line. They had burned all their timeouts, and the Eagles just had to get 1 first down to keep the clock running. And Nick Sirianni decides to call a pass play. And while Saquon did drop an easy first down pass, that play should not have been called because Jake Elliott had to make a field goal with a minute and change left, and Vic Fangio, for whatever the hell reason, decides to play in prevent defense and let Kirk Cousins just slice them up right down the field. Boom, 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 wide open touchdown to Drake London. And it was a good thing that Younghoe Koo made that 40-yard extra point because if he didn't, Drake London would not be well received by the media today. because of that taunting penalty. And then 2 plays later, Jalen Hurts just throws an interception to Jesse Bates. They're literally picking up where they left off last year. They're blowing away winnable games. Their defense is still trash. The offense just gets it way over their heads. Nick Sirianni is looking like one of the biggest jokes of the week so far, because for as much talent as he's had on that offensive side of the ball and for all the success he's had as a head coach, he's completely arrogant. He doesn't really care about the situation at hand. He just tries to play arrogant and say, yeah, no, I'm proud of it. I'm doubling down. And the fact that they didn't even address his team at the end of the game, that the players had to take charge after Nick Sirianni cost them that game, that is a damn shame. That just shows that you don't have the locker room as well as you have. It makes those reports about him and Jalen Hurts having a strained relationship more accurate than not. And it's becoming more and more realistic that if the Eagles underachieve once again, his ass might be out the door. And even though they've been winning and they've been making the playoffs, it just comes a matter of time where it comes down to chemistry, it comes down to discipline, and it comes down to improving, because the Eagles have done none of those things since that Super Bowl defeat. They had a 10-1 start. They collapsed. They barely beat the Packers in Brazil, and you blow a winnable game at home when Nick Foles and Jason Kelce are being celebrated by the city of Philadelphia. That was a damn disgrace. Having said that, I have the Saints winning this game because we all know that this offense has been flat out terrific. 47 points the first week, 44 the next. I don't think they're going to do the same against the Eagles, but I think they're going to be in a way better rhythm. Alvin Kamara has been a beast. Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed have been two of the most underrated wide receivers in the league so far. And we all know what Dennis Allen's defense can do against anybody. That is a damn fact. And Jalen Hurts right now, I mean, the minute that he keeps cleaning up this turnover problem, we're going to say that this Eagles offense is not going to be in sync. And when you don't have A.J. Brown for the next 2 weeks, it doesn't matter who you have out there, whether it's Saquon Barkley or Devontae Smith or Jahan Dotson or Dallas Goedert. It comes down to how you operate as a quarterback, how you're going to hold on to the football. And against this defense, you can't afford to make mistakes. And the Saints know how to take advantage of bad and sloppy football. So I'm going with the Saints here. I'm going to have them win 34-20. And let me see who TJ has here. He's got the Saints as well. So there you go. We both have the Saints. They're at home too. If this was in Philadelphia, then I would have a harder time picking, but we all know that things can get incredibly loud and dramatic when it comes to that stadium. So I'll leave it at that. And the rants are just beginning, because if you thought me going off on the Eagles was one thing, just wait until you get to the rest. And by the way, I completely forgot about this. Second drive of the game. They have a chance to kick a field goal to go up 3-0. They go for it, and the play gets immediately blown up. If you had just kicked the field goal, you would have won, and disaster could have been avoided for the most part. So, yeah, this is all on Nick Sirianni. This is all on Jalen Hurts, and this is just a flat-out collapse. It was a choke job. Give the Falcons credit, but they got completely lucky. They just got a big break, and they took advantage of it. That was all you could ask for from their part. Now we get to the Denver Broncos versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mean, I already pretty much broke down what we saw from Denver. I mean, Bo Nix has been the worst rookie quarterback so far. He's, throwing the interceptions ad nauseum. And it's not entirely his fault, because the weapons around him and the offense around him, the supporting cast, it is just bad. I mean, they can't run the football. They have nobody that can get open. The offensive line is struggling. And Sean Payton has let the game pass him by. I have. He really has. And I don't know if they're going to be able to fire him just because of how much money they give him, what it took for them what they had to give up just to get him to be their head coach. And it's a shame, because I liked the hire at the time, but it has been a disaster so far. It didn't work with Russell Wilson. They let go of him. They cut their losses. The whole organization did. They draft Bo Nix with their first-round pick. They have Jarrett Stidham and Zach Wilson behind him. And this offense has next to nothing that can make a deep impact. I mean, Josh Reynolds and Lil Jordan Humphrey weren't terrible last week, but most of those yards came in garbage time against a legitimate Steelers defense. So that's what I saw from them. With Tampa, yeah, they beat the Lions. They got their revenge, but I don't know. I was not as convinced as a lot of Bucs fans were. I thought Baker Mayfield was okay. He had a couple big touchdowns. He was incredibly dangerous out of the pocket, but at the same time, he got sacked 5 times by Aiden Hutchinson. They could have run the ball. The fourth quarter, they only had 27 yards. They were pretty much giving Detroit every single chance to try to come back and win this game. They even got the lead late in the third quarter, but I mean, the Lions just completely couldn't stop turning the ball over. They only had one drive where they didn't get into Bucs territory, and on all of those drives, they either stalled out for field goals or punts, or Jared Goff just threw 2 of the most boneheaded picks that I've seen him make in a long time. One was on his first pass attempt, and another was on their second to last drive where they had a legit shot to win. So it was really more of Detroit's inefficiency than it was, with Tampa trying to hang in there. And again, I don't want to take anything away from the Bucs defense too much because they were without Antoine Winfield. They didn't have Kalijah Kancey. Vita Vea got hurt in the second half. I give them that. But, I mean, this is one that Detroit had in their laps, and they just completely blew it away. But I think this is going to be a huge bounce-back opportunity for the Bucs on both sides of the ball. I think, their defense should do enough to shut down Bo Nix, to force him to make more mistakes than he's made in the last couple of weeks. They don't have the best running game. They have nobody that can get open. Like I said, this Broncos offense is just so outdated, and Sean Payton has let the game pass him by. And for as well as Denver's defense has played, I mean, they can only do so much. And with how hot Baker Mayfield has been since the end of last season or since the middle of last year, it's only a matter of time before they get exhausted and start to really bend, especially in this Florida heat. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Jace McMillan, Baker Mayfield is going to have a promising game against this Denver defense. It might start out slow, but eventually when they get in a rhythm, they're going to be able to pick it up, and the game is eventually going to get out of hand. TJ's got the Bucs. I've got the Bucs as well. I think it'll be a blowout. I say they get it done 27-9. 27-9. I'll give Denver sympathy because, again, they could keep it close early on, but if the offense continues to struggle, then their defense is going to get gassed. And I think that's a fair assumption. All right, next we've got the Green Bay Packers versus the Tennessee Titans. Malik Willis potentially getting his revenge. That is if Jordan Love is not clear to go. Let's start with the Packers here because they surprised all of us by beating the Colts at home 16-10. Malik Willis had a decent game, only 2 incompletions, over 120 yards. He did what he needed to do. He managed the game. He threw a dime of a touchdown pass to Dontavian Wicks to go up 10-0. But I think plenty of credit has to go to their run game. They ran for 260 yards. Most of them were before halftime. And their defense just completely suffocated Anthony Richardson. They picked him off 3 times. They didn't give up a touchdown until it was garbage time. And even though Jonathan Taylor had about 100 yards, they pretty much made Anthony Richardson, they dared Anthony Richardson to beat him by himself. And he couldn't do it. And I'll talk more about the Colts and their pathetic run defense more later. But I think that the Packers they are well coached. They showed that they are resilient. They knew that they were going to be without their starting quarterback, and they came up with a hell of a game plan with how well they were able to run to the outside. Green Bay was literally telling Indianapolis what they were going to be able to do throughout the whole game, and the Colts couldn't stop it. I know that DeForest Buckner and Laiatu Latu were hurt, but at the same time, you got to make adjustments, and Gus Bradley did not do that whatsoever. It was a flat-out disaster, but wasn't as bad as the Tennessee Titans because once again, they had a winnable game. They actually made it competitive against the New York Jets, and Will Levis once again completely blew it. Let's put this in proper perspective. Opening drive, I think it was their opening drive, but early in the first quarter, you get my point. They go up 7-0. Defense forces a quick 3-and-out. Will Levis is moving the ball extremely well. Calvin Ridley's having a big game. Tony Pollard's doing well, both on the ground and through the air. And they get inside the 10-yard line. If they don't get a touchdown, they're at least going to go up 10-0. Third and goal at the 6-yard line. Will Levis knows the pocket's collapsing. He doesn't want to take the sack. But instead of chucking an interception like he did last week against the Bears, he decides to lateral it with his body completely twisting the other way. Ball's on the ground. Jets recover. Defense forces 3 and out, so no points given up on that. But on Will Levis's next pass attempt, he chucks an arm punt of an interception into double coverage, and the Jets end up scoring a touchdown. Defense didn't have that great of a game against Braylon Allen and Breece Hall. Special teams gave up a blocked punt. But if Will Levis just didn't turn the ball over in these first 2 weeks, they would be 2-0. He has completely cost them both times against the Bears and against the Jets. Even Brian Callahan, the head coach, is getting sick and tired of it. And I'm not going to say that the Jets were lucky because they had a solid game plan on all 3 phases, but Will Levis is just costing them every single chance to try to win. And it could happen again next week. We don't know what's going to happen. Tennessee's defense is obviously better than Indianapolis's, but if Will Levis keeps turning the ball over against the Packers defense that is near the top in takeaways, yeah, we could see it. We could see it happening. So I've actually had a really tough time trying to predict this game. I think the Packers have, if Jordan Love is playing, then I'll give Green Bay a bit of a better advantage. But this one's tough because you know Tennessee's defense is legit. You know that their offense is capable of putting points on the board. You see the flashes from Will Levis, but it's just those damn mistakes that just cost him in the end. TJ's got the tight ends. He's expecting a Will Levis bounce back. I don't know. I have had a really tough time picking this one, but I think for now, I'll pick the Packers. It's going to be really close. I think it'll be a really low-scoring game because I think both defenses have done enough to win games for their football teams respectively. But I think the Packers offense will hold on to the ball more. And if Jordan Love is playing, then that's an even bigger plus. So I'll say the Packers get it done 20-17. And I could be very wrong with this one because Tennessee has done a hell of a job of trying to keep things close and competitive. It's just the turnovers. Next but not least, we got the New York Giants versus the Cleveland Browns. Yeah, this is going to be a horrible game because, I mean, you know why. Oh, God. You know what? I'll start with the team that won, even though they really didn't deserve to. I'll go with the Cleveland Browns. First half, I like what I saw from them. They got points on all 3 of their drives. Deshaun Watson had a 9-minute touchdown drive. He looked a lot better than he did last week. Defense was shutting the Jaguars offense down in Trevor Banks Stadium. So I'm not even joking with that one. That's actually what they opened the season with. Trevor Banks Stadium, because of his collaboration with the name sponsor of the stadium. You know, only held him to 16 yards in the first half. 16 yards in the first half. That is just flat out unbelievable. But the second half was when everything completely fell flat on its face. 2 for 10 on third down. Or actually, let me pull up the stats because I don't even think I'm accurate with this one. I have it somewhere because it was flat out horrendous. Where the heck is it? Here we go. 2 for 14 on third down. So close enough, but you get the point. Horrible in that area. 13 penalties for 100 yards. Less than 100 yards in the whole second half. They were literally doing everything they could to give Jacksonville that victory. And the offense completely sucked. They were down by 3. Trevor Lawrence had a chance to tie the game or win it. And he takes a sack in the end zone for a safety. And the next time he gets the ball back, they turn it over on downs and they run out of time. So Cleveland better get on their hands and knees and thank the good Lord that they're not 0-2. Because if Jacksonville wasn't so god-awful on offense, especially in the red zone, Cleveland would easily be one of the worst teams of the league. Without question. And it's not going to be because of the defense. It's because of the quarterback that they're giving the most amount of guaranteed money to. Because he's been outright pathetic. pathetic. And I'll leave it at that. With the Giants, a lot better than last week, but if they had a kicker, they would have won. Graham Gano hurts his hamstring on the opening kickoff. And who knew that Austin Seibert would score all 21 of Washington's points? I mean, the Giants had 3 touchdowns. They didn't give up a single one on defense, yet they still lost because they didn't have an emergency kicker. Daniel Jones was actually decent. 178 yards, 2 touchdowns. Devin Singletary was awesome running the football. Malik Neighbors had a standout rookie game, but, I mean, tied at 18, 4th down drop, that really cost them in the end. And Washington got points on all 6 of their drives leading up to that point. Or 7. They had 7 drives if you want to count the knee at the end of the half. But the point is, the Giants were doing whatever they could to win. They did everything they could to win. Yeah, they gave up plenty of yards on the run or on the ground, but they slowed down the passing game. They sacked Jaden Daniels 5 times. Offense was having a way better game than they did last week. Granted, the Commanders don't have a great defense, but if they had a kicker, they would have won. You can't really blame this on Daniel Jones. You can't blame it too much on Malik Neighbors, even though the drop was costly. You can't blame it too much on their run defense. They were doing what they could. They just didn't have a kicker. And again, we could point to those final 2 drives all we want, but it's really more of a coaching loss than anything because they were not prepared for this situation. They knew Graham Gano was banged up leading into this game, and it came back to bite them in the butt. I don't know what more can be said. Now we get into this game. I'm going with the Browns. I think it's going to be pretty ugly. In Cleveland, you know how well their defense is going to play. Myles Garrett is going to be a menace out there, along with Dalvin Tomlinson and Zadarius Smith and the rest of that whole unit. Giants defense, I'm guessing that they're going to play well enough because this is Deshaun Watson we're talking about. This is quite possibly the worst starting quarterback in the league. Him or Bryce Young or even Daniel Jones. Those 3 are on the list. But I think, one defense is going to come out swinging, and they're going to play with more passion and with more fire. And looking at both groups and how productive they've been over the past 2 weeks, I have more confidence in the Browns to get this done. So I'll say the Cleveland Browns win 27-3 because it's not too impossible to see the Browns look decent on offense. I don't know how hard it could be. I don't know what the status is going to be with David Njoku, but if they really want to have a good day on that side of the ball, Amari Cooper needs to stop dropping the ball. That's why he's been underutilized. That's why he's been frustrated. He actually got a pay raise, so all those contract issues have been resolved, and yet he still hasn't been the type of number 1 option that we expected to see from them. And maybe that'll come over time, but it's got to start showing up right now because he's their best target at this point. So, I almost forgot. TJ is picking the Browns as well. All right, next we got the Chicago Bears versus the Indianapolis Colts. We've already talked about the Bears, or we've actually talked about both teams. Bears offense failed to show up once again. O-line is still a disaster. 7 sacks, 11 hits. I don't know why Matt Eberflus said in his press conference that they're not making changes because it's been the weakness for the last 3 years. It's what ruined Justin Fields. It could potentially ruin Caleb Williams, a generational quarterback. That offensive line was the biggest reason why they lost this game. That and the 2 interceptions that Caleb Williams threw because the defense was doing everything they could. Kyrie Fairburn scored 16 of Houston's 19 points. And while they had a hard time struggling against Nico Collins, they did what they could to prevent this game from getting out of hand. I personally think the Texans could have won in a blowout if it wasn't for that fumble by Cam Akers inside the 5-yard line late in the 4th quarter. But when you look at the Colts, they are in a worse situation. Anthony Richardson is so on and off. They don't have a consistent passing game. And their defense is a disaster. I knew it heading into the season, but I did not think that they'd have one of the worst run defenses in recent memory. Because last week, you gave up 150 yards to Joe Mixon. And then the next week, without Jordan Love, you do the same thing, not just with Josh Jacobs. You give up 260 yards. Now, the Bears might not have the most dominant run game themselves, because you got DeAndre Swift and Khalil Herbert, but those guys are capable of having 80-plus yards on the ground. They are. And it would not shock me at all if they found a way to fall to 0-3, just how bad they've been, just for the simple fact of how bad they've been on that side of the ball. And if Anthony Richardson just stops turning the ball over and just find ways to deliver in the clutch, that'll go a long way into them winning this football game, because he did what he could late in the second half against the Houston Texans, but those struggles through the first 30 minutes ended up biting them in the butt. So I think the Bears will win this game. You know, both teams are going to keep it scrappy early on, but I think the Bears offense has a lot more talent. Their defense is legit. Matt Eberflus has done a tremendous job, and it's a revenge game for him because it's his first trip back into Indianapolis. I didn't even think of that until just now. So I'll see the Bears win 28-13. This offense has to show up at some point, though, because if it was to bet again, then they're not going to win like they did against Tennessee. That team straight up collapsed. And maybe Anthony Richardson will give Chicago a couple opportunities, but I'll believe it when I see it. All right, now we got the Raiders versus the Panthers. Oh, boy. First of all, I'm picking the Raiders. And, I almost forgot. TJ's picking the Bears as well. So we're expecting them to bounce back as well. Let's start with the Raiders first. I already talked about how bad the Ravens choked away another 10-point lead in the fourth quarter, but I got to give a lot of credit to the Raiders, too. I mean, nobody thought at the beginning of the year that Gardner Minshew was going to lead the league in completion percentage through the first two games. First half, he struggled. He only had 64 yards, but then once he got the ball to start the third quarter, after that turnover on downs where he tried to chuck a touchdown pass to Davante Adams, he got his swagger, he's got his confidence, he got his mojo, and he, along with Max Crosby, single-handedly led the Raiders to victory. They only had one drive in the second half where they didn't get any points. And granted, while the defense started to buckle down in the third and the fourth quarter, when the game needed to be won, they made the plays that needed to be made. Max Crosby was a beast. Robert Spillane had a huge interception that really set the tone for the Raiders throughout the rest of the game. Davante Adams was uncoverable. Brock Bowers had one of his best games of the year. And they didn't even have a run game. They only had 27 yards of rushing. Like, that should have been a blowout, but they didn't let Lamar get in the end zone in the first half. And while it was more of Baltimore beating themselves, the Raiders took advantage of those mistakes. They stole this game. And it's now the second straight year that Gardner Minshew has won a game in Baltimore. So I got nothing but props for them. But now we get to the worst team in the league, the biggest clown show, the Carolina Panthers. Bryce Young is now benched. Andy Dalton will start. And I have so much to talk about with this because ever since David Tepper has bought the team in 2018, he has single-handedly run this team into the ground. Bryce Young could quite possibly go down as the biggest number one bust in NFL history. At least when the Raiders drafted Jamarcus Russell in 2007, you could say, well, the Raiders never really did their homework. Al Davis overruled Lane Kiffin on it, and they wanted the hot quarterback coming out of LSU. They didn't know about him not watching film or staying in shape or not really caring about the game. And that happens with a lot of draft picks. So whatever. The Panthers, they gave up 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and DJ Moore. 3 of those picks became Darnell Wright, Caleb Williams, and Tyreek Stevenson. The Panthers gave up all of that to go up to the number 1 spot. They draft Bryce Young, and then 2 games into the regular season, he is the backup quarterback. His confidence is completely destroyed. He looks completely terrified to step back in the pocket. He's getting sacked. He's getting sacked left and right. He's holding onto the ball too long. He's overthrowing and underthrowing everything in sight. He's making some terrible reads. And this was the year that things were supposed to head back into the right direction because they traded for Deontay Johnson. You draft Xavier Liggett. You trade up in the first round just to get him. You signed Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis to huge contracts. You hired Dave Canales to be the head coach, a guy that's been known for turning around the careers of some quarterbacks like Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield. And it's been worse than last year. It has been single-handedly worse. And this solely falls on ownership because he's pulls the trigger on head coaches. He's had too many quarterbacks completely fail. You see what's happening with Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield. Their careers getting back on track. And this is why I said Dave Canales and Dan Morgan are completely set up to fail, because the minute that you step foot into this locker room, all you're going to experience is pain and misery. And I'm not even going to bring up the numbers from what happened because we already know that they were going to be this bad. We knew it. I just didn't think that – I knew they were going to be a bad team. I knew that they could potentially still be the worst. I just wanted to see progress. And maybe we could see that next week with Andy Dalton. But David Tepper is the worst owner in the league, bar none. It's just a flat-out disgrace. What is happening? I don't blame the populace for not even showing up whatsoever because the franchise has had so many hopeful seasons with great players. They made a Super Bowl a decade ago. They made another one in 2003. They were one of the hottest teams in the 90s. They were a flat-out machine in the early 2000s. Cam Newton has been the face of their franchise throughout his entire career. And then the minute he left, they went through, Teddy Bridgewater. They went through Sam Darnold. They went through Baker Mayfield. And now they've had Bryce Young. Their head coaches have been Ron Rivera, Matt Rule, Steve Wilkes, the interim that got fired after Rivera, Frank Reich. I forgot who the interim head coach was the minute Frank Reich got fired. And now you got Dave Canales. That's 7 head coaches in 7 years. And probably more quarterbacks to go through the door. I didn't even mention PJ Walker. That's how bad it has been. So that's the tirade I'll go on for now. And I mean, I just feel so bad for every single player, for every single coach, because while some accountability has to be handed on to them because they're the ones on the field putting out this product. I mean, nobody expected it to go down the tubes the way it's been. And I really just hope that Dave Canales does not lose his job again. Having said that, I got the Raiders winning. I don't even care if Bryce Young or Andy Dalton is starting because we all know that this is probably going to go down the tubes fast. I think with Dalton starting, you'll see the Panthers play with a bigger sense of fight, and they'll try early on. But against Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins and Gardner Minshew and Devontae Adams, it's just the Panthers have their work cut out for them, to say the least. I got the Raiders. I say they do it 24-10. But TJ has the Carolina Panthers. So I hope that the next time he comes onto the show that he gets to gloat about it, just for his sake. Because we just hope to God that the Panthers don't become the new White Sox or the new Pistons. Because, I mean, again, I'm at a loss of words because this is it's just depressing. It really, really is. And I'm going to move on to this next game because I don't want to lose my voice. Seahawks versus Dolphins. I pretty much talked about Seattle early on in the show. DK Metcalf and JSN, they were unstoppable. The defense showed that they are one of the most improved units in the league. Didn't play the best 60 minutes of football, but showed up when they were needed to. They made bigger plays down the stretch. Geno Smith showed up in the clutch, and that's all they needed at the end. They kept it close. They had a chance. They were this close to potentially losing, but Leonard Williams with the timely sack and the blocked field goal opened up everything else, and that was enough for them in the end. With Miami, their season is slowly starting to head into a downward spiral because Tua Tagovailoa is now on IR due to a concussion. It's the 4th concussion that he has suffered in the last 2 years. First off, I just want to offer my prayers and my best thoughts to him and his family. I can't even imagine, how they're feeling at this moment. I'm just hoping for a speedy and a healthy recovery. And I don't even care if he comes back to the football field. I just want him to be around his family and to be able to live a healthy and happy life. And, if he comes back to the field, that is his decision. If he retires, then he will retire. But it's not up to us to make that decision. It's to him and his family, because with 4 concussions suffered in 2 years, that's when the hardest conversations really need to take place. And I might not offer the best perspective on it because I never played the game, but, we all know what's going to happen eventually. When I came to Thursday Night Football, it was hard to watch. I mean, Tua threw 3 interceptions, one of them for a pick 6 by A.J. Epinesa. They try to go for it on 4th down early in the game, and Ed Oliver comes with the sack. James Cook had a phenomenal 3-touchdown performance, and Josh Allen only had 139 yards. 24 of Buffalo's 31 points came in short field position, meaning that if Dolphins just held on to the football, then they would have had at least a better chance of winning or making it a lot closer than 31-10. But the minute that you saw Skylar Thompson come into the game, it was just game over. I mean, Tyreek Hill only had 3 catches, Jalen Waddle just 4. And, I mean, after Tua suffered that injury, you just knew that the Dolphins were not going to be able to come back to win. With Skylar Thompson starting against Seattle, I don't know how much of a chance Miami will have. I mean, obviously, you still have Tyreek and Waddle. You have the speed. Hopefully, HM will be able to give it a go. Hopefully, Raheem Mostert will be back. But at the same time, that offense is built around Tua. You see the type of plays that they run with him at quarterback compared to the ones with Skylar Thompson or Teddy Bridgewater. It is not the same offense. And when they are not in sync, it puts more pressure on the defense. And while it's been decent through the first 2 games, I just don't know how it's going to hold up down the stretch when you're going up against a scrappy Geno Smith and a Seahawks defense that has really come onto the scene here. So I think the Seahawks will win. I don't think it'll be a blowout, but I expect them to pull away down the stretch. I have them winning 27-13, and TJ's got the Seahawks as well. Now we get to the Ravens versus the Dallas Cowboys. Oh, dear God. Yeah, this was just pathetic and shameful. There's no excuse for what happened to Baltimore at home. You're up 10 in the 4th quarter. Derrick Henry has 84 yards. Lamar Jackson is having a great game as a quarterback. The defense sacked Gardner Minshew 5 times. And in those final 10 minutes, the Ravens completely choked once again. They got away from the run. It was once again Lamar Jackson or bust. Max Crosby was a flat-out menace on the defensive line. And the defense completely fell apart. They were undisciplined. They made no adjustments. They had no answers for Devontae Adams. Gardner Minshew scored on all but 1 drive in the second half alone. And all the Ravens had to do was just not lose control of the game. And the minute they got away from Derrick Henry, you just knew that the Raiders were going to have a couple more opportunities to get back into the ball game. And that's exactly what happened. This happens to them like at least 3 to 4 times a year, where they have a comfortable lead, they're in cruise control, it seems like they're going to have a promising victory, and then sure enough, they get in over their heads and let the game completely get them by. Give credit to the Raiders because Devontae was great. Minshew showed up at his absolute best after the slow first half he had, but no touchdowns in the first half, and then not a single point or anything substantial in the final 10 minutes of the 4th quarter. That was inexcusable. That was disgraceful. And now they're 0-2. Deservingly so. Because last week, you failed to close on plenty of opportunities against the Chiefs. And then the next, you completely lose the game single-handedly against the Raiders. And there's no other way to slice it. The Cowboys were a lot worse, though, because against the New Orleans Saints, their defense got absolutely torched on 6 straight touchdowns. Alvin Kamara scored 4. Derek Carr had a couple of touchdowns at well over 200 yards. They were getting picked apart left and right. And the Cowboys offense doesn't deserve too much blame because they were moving the ball extremely well, but they failed to match the New Orleans offense. Brandon Aubrey was responsible on 16 of their 19 plays. They only had 1 big touchdown, which was the 65-yarder to CeeDee Lamb. Dak threw 2 picks. And when it was time to get in the end zone in short field, they failed to do it. And maybe if they had scored a touchdown on 1 or 2 of those chances, then maybe the game could have gone differently. But dear Lord, that was a flat out annihilation. And it just shows why I never had faith in the Cowboys to begin with. Because I knew they were going to make the playoffs. I think they still will. They should be a wild card contender, but nothing has changed for them. The offense is CeeDee Lamb or bust. The defense cannot stop the run. They gave up 190 on the ground on Sunday. Their secondary is completely banged up to hell because Trayvon Diggs is coming back from a torn ACL. You don't have Deron Bland. You just lost Stephon Gilmore. And now you're going up against the Ravens with Lamar Jackson, who was just the MVP last year. I think the Ravens will bounce back. At some point in time, you got to be able to get a first win of the season. If they fall to 0-3, then that's when we really need to start panicking about them because not many teams can come back from that type of a start. And the Cowboys, they just look really mediocre. They're an average football team. Yeah, their defense shut down the Cleveland Browns, but we all knew that at some point in time when they came against legitimate competition, they were going to fall flat on their face. And that's what I think will happen to them once again against Lamar. So I think the Ravens will try to bounce back on track. We know that this defense is not going to let what happened last week ever happen again. And this offense is going to adjust, I'm hoping. So I say the Ravens will win 31-13. Yeah, I think it's going to be a blowout. And TJ's got the Cowboys. So he does not have that much faith in Lamar. And that's shocking from TJ because he is the Giants fan. So, yeah, I'm trying to make sure I didn't miss any of TJ's picks. All right, we're good. Sorry about that. Now we get to the Detroit Lions versus the Arizona Cardinals. I'll talk about Detroit first, even though I already pretty much recapped how it went for them. Aiden Hutchinson had 5 sacks. Their defense held Baker Mayfield and company to just 27 yards in the fourth quarter. Even though they gave up a couple punches to him, to Chris Godwin, and even a few to Mike Evans, I still think that Detroit's defense did more than enough to try to win this game, but the offense completely let them down. This passing game has me really, really concerned because last week against the Rams was one thing, but they only had one drive where they didn't cross midfield, and they only scored 1 touchdown and 3 field goals. Jared Goff threw 2 of the worst interceptions I've seen in my life, and when it was time to win the game, Goff completely cost them in the end. And Amon-Ra St. Brown had a great game, so did Jameson Williams, but when they get away from the run and they make Jared Goff throw the ball 55 times, that hardly works unless you're Patrick Mahomes or if you're Joe Burrow or even if you're in the Tom Brady or Peyton Manning in the past. So against defenses like this, you got to be able to have a balanced operation. And Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery didn't do that bad running the football. Montgomery scored their only touchdown. Jahmyr Gibbs had over 6 yards of carry. And for whatever reason, Jared Goff just kept turning the ball over, and they kept stalling out every time they got within scoring range, which is just unacceptable. But against the Cardinals, we'll see them because Kyler has yet to beat this team in his career. But after last week, we might have second opinion on that because he had a perfect passer rating against the Rams. He was unstoppable with both his arm and his legs. Marvin Harrison Jr. was unstoppable in the first half with 2 touchdowns and over 130 yards. James Conner was a workhorse. He was pretty much carrying the Cardinals offense in the whole second half. I think they only had 2 drives where they didn't score, but I was most impressed with their defense. I know that the Rams offense is injured to hell, but to hold Stafford to just 216 passing yards and to sack him 5 times, that was incredible. And maybe things could be a little more competitive without Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, but every time that the Rams try to make it a game, the Cardinals completely shut them down. You know, they had a couple big red zone stops, especially towards the end of the half. And, I mean, the only time the Rams scored a touchdown, the Cardinals were up ahead by over 20. So it didn't really mean too much in the end. I had a really tough time picking this one because normally when it comes to the history side of it, I would pick the Lions. But I actually loved what I saw with the Cardinals last week. If they could do that against the Rams, who barely lost to the Detroit Lions last week, just imagine what they could do against Jared Goff, who has not had a great 2 weeks so far. If the Lions can run the ball, then they'll be in a lot better shape. But, I mean, the Lions, this is going to be the first mobile quarterback that they're going to go up against. And Kyler Murray has been sharp. And it looks like this Cardinals team could surprise a lot of people down the stretch. So TJ's got the Cardinals. I think I'm going to pick the Cardinals too. It'll be close. I think it's going to come down to a walk-off field goal. Matt Prater will get his revenge against his former team. So I say that the Cardinals once again will win at home 26-23. Really, the Lions have to stop turning the ball over and not get away from the run. And then I'll change my mind. So that's why. Now we got 3 more games coming up. Thanks for watching for those that were able to tune into the stream. I know it wasn't that easy being able to deal with my boring voice throughout the whole hour, but you know what? We're still here, baby. Next up, we got the 49ers versus the Los Angeles Rams. A battle between 2 legitimate NFC West rivals, but both are completely injured to hell. Let's just start with the Rams. I mean, I already talked about what happened to them last week, but they're going to be without Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, 4 starting offensive linemen, and 3 starting defensive backs. Matthew Stafford is going to be completely outmatched against the 49ers defense that is still going to be at full strength. That still has Nick Bosa and Javon Hargrave and Fred Warner and Devontae Campbell, and a 49ers defense that has got shredded last week, don't get me wrong, but against a team like the Rams, when they are at full strength, they know how to keep them how to make them completely one-dimensional. The 49ers offense is going to struggle, though, as well, because without Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey, a lot more pressure is going to be on Brock Purdy. You know, Jordan Mason has been incredible, but Brandon Ayuk has been on a slump. George Kittle, we're waiting for him to really completely break out and remind us why he's one of the top 3 tight ends in the league. And this offensive line gave up 6 sacks and 2 turnovers. So I think the 49ers will win here. It's on the road, so it's going to be a little harder. But when both teams are at full strength or when they have their starters in, Kyle Shanahan has normally had the regular season advantage. So it'll be a lower scoring game. I don't know how well Brock Purdy is going to play, but with the amount of injuries that the Rams have been dealing with, especially on their defense, I could see him having a pretty solid performance. So I say the 49ers will win 27-13. And excuse me, TJ has the 49ers as well. So just for the record. All right, Sunday Night Football, we have the Chiefs versus the Atlanta Falcons. I didn't even get to talk about the Chiefs game. That's pretty crazy. With the Falcons, listen, last week they stunned everybody with their late-minute comeback against the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, granted, Nick Sirianni completely gifted them the game by calling a pass play on 3rd and 3, and Saquon Barkley let it drop through his hands. And they got the ball back with too much time left. But give Kirk Cousins credit. He took advantage of the situation. He knew what defense that Philly was going to run, and he found Drake London in the end zone for what ended up being the game-winning touchdown. So I don't want to take anything away from Kirk Cousins. With the amount of adversity he dealt with last year, he deserves his shining moment. But, yeah, that was just flat-out pathetic from the Eagles' part. But it also showed a lot of positive signs from their defense because while they gave up a lot of rushing yards to both Saquon and Jalen Hurts, I mean, if you told me that the Eagles were only going to score 18 points or only 1 touchdown throughout the whole game, I'd say, all right, that was enough to win. And, you know, they did what they could. They bent, but they didn't break. Very simple. Now we get to the Chiefs. For the first time that I have watched Patrick Mahomes, I have never seen him get bailed out in a game the way that he did on Sunday. And it's not because of the flag, because that was the right call. It was pass interference. And even if the defender didn't hit him early, it was going to be a wide open completion. They were going to get in field goal range. It was just a very careless decision by that defender and by the defense itself because it was a complete breakdown. But the reason why I say Patrick Mahomes got bailed out is because the Cincinnati Bengals completely lost a winnable game here. Let's put this in its proper perspective. Let me pull up my notes here. Patrick Mahomes finished the game with just 151 yards and 2 picks. Travis Kelce only had 1 catch. Patrick Mahomes only had one big throw, which was the 44-yard touchdown pass to Rashee Rice. The only touchdown they got in the second half was on a trick play. So the Bengals defense only held Kansas City to 17 points. Trey Hendrickson had a couple sacks. Cam Taylor-Britt had one of the best interceptions that I've seen in my life. Yet the Bengals offense cost them in more ways than one. Joe Burrow did pretty well, close to 260 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Kansas City had a great game plan. Give Steve Spagnuolo a lot of credit because they said, you can beat us with anybody else, just not Jamar Chase. And he only had 4 catches for 35 yards. So Joe Burrow was doing whatever he could. But in the fourth quarter, or really midway through the third and into the fourth, the Bengals let the Chiefs completely come back. There was the missed extra point by Evan McPherson. Then before there's a Jamar Chase penalty, Joe Burrow gets strip sacked, and it gets scooped and scored by the Chiefs for the go-ahead touchdown by the Chiefs. 6 points that ended up being the biggest difference in the ball game. And then that Jamar Chase unsportsmanlike penalty completely hurt them because even though the Bengals still got into field goal range, it would have at least assured that Cincinnati would chew up a lot more clock and that Patrick Mahomes wouldn't have much time to win the game. And then on Cincinnati's final drive, they go 3 and out, and Joe Burrow takes a sack on third down. They committed 8 penalties for 79 yards. They were 4 for 13 on third down. They were really, really undisciplined. And that was something that the Chiefs had. They had more poise. They showed more resilience. And all they needed to do was just get a break at the end. And that pass interference penalty helped them. It was the right call. Refs should not be vilified for that, even though we all see the memes. We've all seen the memes. But, that's all it took, was just take advantage of your opponent's mistakes. And that's what helped them in the end. And I think against the Falcons, the Chiefs should win. They have the better quarterback. They have a more talented offense, even though Isaiah Pacheco is going to be out for an indefinite amount of time, which is a huge blow. But you got to have some type of production from Travis Kelce. This needs to be a big game for him. 3 catches through the first 2 games, only 1 for 5 in the game on Sunday against Cincinnati. He's the best tight end in football, and he has not looked like it. So this has to be a huge game for him. But really, I think that this defense has more than enough pieces to try to slow down Atlanta's offense. It did enough at the end, but I still need to see more from them. They haven't convinced me that things are really starting to make them look like that things are really heading into the right direction that quickly. So far, so good, but I really need to see them explode and for them to really take off. So I got the Chiefs in this game. I say they win 27-20 because Kirk Cousins is the type of quarterback that is not going to let this type of a game be a blowout or get completely lopsided. But TJ has the Falcons, and we all know that he is a huge Kirk Cousins believer, as am I, because I love him as a human being. But Atlanta has their work cut out for them. Their defense has to really take it up a notch, and Kirk Cousins has to really be the biggest difference maker in this game because without him, and if he doesn't play well, they're not going to have a shot. I'm sorry. It just really comes down to that. Now we get to the Monday night doubleheader. We got the Jaguars and the Bills in Buffalo, and we also have the Bengals and Commanders in Cincinnati. So, honestly, not the most exciting doubleheader, but you got 2 playoff contenders, playing on that night. So, that always is going to be interesting. Let's start with the Bills game because, I don't really need to break down what happened on Thursday Night Football. Their defense played outstanding. 3 picks, 1 for a pick 6. They held Miami to 10 points. Jalen Waddle only had 4 catches. Tyreek Hill with 3. Never trailed. And also, the minute Skylar Thompson came into the game, it was pretty much over. Josh Allen, he took advantage of Miami's mistakes because 24 of 31 points came in short field. James Cook had a phenomenal game, but only 139 yards. That was not that great. So I'm expecting him to have a better game against this Jaguars defense, who's actually has been pretty solid these past 2 weeks. normally I'd say, okay, this is probably going to be a blowout, but Ryan Nielsen, the defensive coordinator for Jacksonville, he has done a way better job than I had expected. And if Trevor Lawrence decided to show up once in a while, especially down the stretch and in the red zone, they would be in a way better situation. Jacksonville has had this team's number before. You know, we saw 2021 when Josh Allen beat Josh Allen, or outplayed him rather, in Jacksonville. 2 years later in London, you know, Travis Etienne having a huge game, and then Bills offense going one-dimensional until it was too late. Jacksonville ends up winning that game. So the Jaguars have proven that they can keep up with Buffalo, and they have the pieces to beat them at their own game. But after last week, it was disgraceful. 16 passing yards in the first half. Horrific in the red zone. The sack for a safety when the game could have been won, or when you were in position to keep it going and to actually validate the stadium being renamed Trevor Banks Stadium. You could have at least redeemed yourselves there, but the offense is a joke. Trevor Lawrence is a turnover magnet. He has completely let this team down for the last 2 games. And against Buffalo's defense, he could be set up for another pathetic performance. And if they don't get it together soon, Doug Peterson's going to get fired once again, and this might be the last chance he'll ever have as a head coach. He'll probably get another job as an assistant, but it's the same mistakes that cost him in Philly, and these are the same types of problems that he's running into now, and he's not adjusting to them. So I think the Buffalo Bills will win. Same thing with TJ, because he loves Josh Allen, but I think this is actually going to be a blowout. It's not going to be like a 38-7 type of contest, but I know that Josh Allen is going to have a great game. And I also know that Buffalo's defense is not going to let Trevor Lawrence or Travis Etienne just pick them apart drive after drive after drive. So this is the first time they're going to be playing in Highmark Stadium. And on Monday Night Football, I don't know how much better. I don't know what more that Buffalo can ask. So I say that the Bills will win 31-10. 31-10. And now we get to the final game, the Bengals versus the Commanders. Yeah, those 2 games were very interesting. I'll start with the Commanders. I think they were the luckiest team to win this week because, yeah, they scored on all 7 of their drives, but if the Giants had a kicker, Washington would probably be 0-2 right now because the Giants scored 3 touchdowns. Their defense didn't give up a single one, and yet they still lost because Graham Gano hurt his hamstring on the opening kickoff. That was really all it took. And now they ran the ball extremely well, and their defense got the benefit of Malik Neighbors dropping a wide open pass on 4th down, but this team is still going through the motions. They were a lot better than last week. Jaden Daniels made the plays that needed to be made to win the game, but it's just Zach Ertz cannot be the team's leading receiver. This passing game has to open up. You got Terry McLaurin, Luke McCaffrey, De'Ami Brown. You have guys that can get open and stretch the field. The running backs are doing a good job. Same thing with Zach Ertz. But this is just the Carolina Panthers if they had better quarterback play. That's just my personal opinion. And Dan Quinn's defense has not been that better either because Daniel Jones had a promising game. Devin Singletary had close to 100 yards. And Malik Neighbors had one of the best games of his rookie career with 127 on 10 catches. And their second touchdown of the game. Right? Was it their second touchdown? You get my point. The Bengals, on the other hand, they completely blew this game more than the Chiefs got bailed out. Well, actually, I said that the Chiefs got bailed out before because of the Bengals' incompetence and their inefficiency to close. Midway through the 3rd and into the 4th, they completely lost that game. And I already brought up the plays that were lost. I don't need to really rehash them. But this Bengals team, I was expecting things to be different. Joe Burrow did what he could for 45 minutes, but when it was time to close the deal and win the game, he completely let them down. He made too many mistakes. Jamar Chase was not in the right mindset. He had a dumb unsportsmanlike conduct penalty and cost his team field position and just saved more time for the Chiefs to try to come back and to get the lead. There was that huge scoop and score that was the biggest difference in the ball game, in my opinion. And then that pass interference penalty was justified because the defender hit him early, and it was a breakdown in coverage. There are no excuses for that. Those tweets that are going to be coming out about the Chiefs and the rest, they won't be validated this week. But we all know that when the Bengals get off to these slow starts, this is the week where they start to turn it around. The Commanders don't have a great defense. Their offense is up and down. You see the flashes, but you also know that they have plenty of flaws that can get exposed. And, I mean, I'm still not that sold on Washington's O-line because they gave up 5 sacks against the Giants, and now you're going up against Trey Hendrickson, who is one of the most underrated pass rushers in the league. But I think the Bengals will win. I don't see this being a total blowout since I know Washington can run the ball extremely well and their defense is scrappy at times. But I think Joe Burrow will bounce back. He'll lead this team to victory. Hopefully T. Higgins can come back so that way the whole offense can open up and the playbook is not so limited and short. TJ's got the Bengals as well. I think Cincinnati will hold on at home 30-20. They got to do a lot better than they've done in the last 2 weeks, or else they're going to completely fall out of playoff contention quickly. If they drop to 0-3, then their odds are going to completely plummet. And that is not something that we really want to see. All right. Thank you all so much for watching. Thanks for tuning in. For those that did, God bless you. This is the first solo live stream. Hopefully the rants weren't too emotional and that the stammering wasn't too much. But, you know, it's week 3. We've seen a lot of drama. We've seen plenty of great games. We've seen plenty of boring ones. I think Tom Brady's claims about the league being mediocre are starting to get more and more valid by the week, just because you expect better out of some of these teams. But we'll see what happens a week from now. So make sure you like and subscribe for additional content. Leave a comment below who you think is going to win. And hopefully TJ will be back next week because I miss him dearly. Love you, buddy. Hopefully everything's going well. Have a great rest of your week, everybody. Peace.